Cold when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand tonight, the greatest gift you keep go on, pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are a part of God's great big family. And the truth, love is all the way. What a pleasant good evening to you. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the world. We'd like to welcome you to another interesting edition of the program, Talk with the Pastor. It's good to be here. It's good to be in studios, and we're broadcasting to you from the state of Western Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, and of course, the geographical location happens to be Western PA. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to another interesting and fascinating edition of the program, Talk with the Pastor. I'm your usual presenter and producer. I'm your host this evening, Zay Zapata. I want to welcome you to the show. This particular production, we're going to be talking to a prominent individual, an activist who's involved in the kingdom of God on earth, the role of the church, the capacity, the role it has to play in the building of a genuine nation, a genuine world. And it's a great privilege today that we can be here to be sharing with you these quiet moments, a time of deep reflection. Talk with the Pastor is a program designed by the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network, a program that is designed specifically for you, with you in mind. And we come here each week discussing wide range of topics. But today I have with me a special guest, the district superintendent of the a former Wilmington district of the United Methodist Church, now regarded as the Delaware district, as I was told by my guest. I recently sat with Reverend Joseph Archie, who happens to be the district superintendent of the Delaware district in Delaware, uh, the United States of America. And of course, that is within the northeastern jurisdiction of the Eastern PA Conference, Eastern PA. In fact, it's called the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church. Because of the realignment that is taking place currently as we speak, Eastern PA is indeed collaborating with the Baltimore Washington Conference, annual conference of the United Methodist Church, with the retirement of Bishop Peggy Johnson. I've known Joe Archie for quite some time, even before moving to the Seneca area, before taking on this responsibility as a pastor of the Seneca United Methodist Church. We go all the way back in the tri-state area of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and of course New Jersey. Then when I was on campus, a seminarian in residence also, a local pastor in the area there of Delaware State. We're going to be looking at what's happening within the conference of the Eastern PA. What is taking place there? Quite some time we haven't had a time to be able to talk to District Archie, but it is indeed a great privilege that today we're going to be taking the time as we discuss today to get some basic insights from District Archie regarding what is actually taking place within the Delaware Peninsula Conference of the United Methodist Church. And
Well, thank you very much. We want to welcome you once again to
conversation
another interesting
to reflect
edition of
deeply
our program,
as we call in
Talk with the
our
Pastor.
special
We
guest,
discuss a
who
wide
happens
range
to
of
be
issues
Joe
relative
Archie,
to
the
the
district
well-being
superintendent
of
of
humanity
the
in
Delaware
general.
Peninsula Conference
And
of the United
it is a
Methodist
great
Church.
privilege
Recently,
this
I sat
week
with him. We
to
discussed a
have with
wide
us
range of issues
a brother of ours,
concerning what is prevailing
someone who is
in the
deeply
Delaware
involved in the area of
district of the
ministry,
United Methodist Church.
a champion for the
Stay
poor
tuned.
and the oppressed
Listen
of
in.
society, in person of Joseph Archie. He's the district superintendent of the Delaware Peninsula, uh, Wilmington district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church. Let's get that right. Reverend Archie is joining us today from Wilmington, and we're going to be having of the Peninsula. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much. We want to welcome you once again to another interesting edition of our program, Talk with the Pastor. We discuss a wide range of issues relative to the well-being of humanity in general. And that it is a great privilege this week to have with us a brother of ours, someone who is deeply involved in the area of ministry, a champion for the poor and the oppressed of society, in person of Joseph Archie. He's the district superintendent of the Delaware Peninsula, uh, Wilmington district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church. Let's get that right. Reverend Archie is joining us today from Wilmington, and we're going to be having a very fascinating conversation as we engage through this platform to look at some of the prevailing issues within the Wilmington district of United Methodist Church. As we all prepare as Methodists worldwide, we're in this mood of anticipation, not only for the season of expectation that is just upon us, Christmas, but also next year. There is a considerable degree of engagement between pastors, churches, conferences across the continental level in actually strategizing, praying, working towards what is expected to come in September of 2022. We do not know what September of 2022 will look like, but as people of faith, we continue to remain in prayer that God will be able to direct our path as we gather as a whole community and a body of faith within the Methodist tradition. Let me use this opportunity to welcome Brother Archie to the program, Talk with the Pastor. It's been quite some time. We have not had an opportunity. I remember the last time we had a conversation or an interview was at Drew University when we were then in residence there. Welcome to the program, Talk with the Pastor, Pastor Archie from the Wilmington district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference.
Thank you, Dr. Zeze Capade. I am so thankful for being with you on today. And yes, it has been a while since you and I have been together in a similar type of situation. And I thank you for inviting me then. That was a few years ago before this
Yeah,
global pandemic. And I met with you at Drew University, and we talked about some of the issues of social justice that our conference and in particular our district was engaged in. And some of that work has continued. Some things have stayed the same and some things have changed. Even our conference has gone from 4 districts to 3 districts in a realignment. And so
that's
I
right.
was the Wilmington district superintendent, and with the new arrangement, I'm what we call now the Delaware district superintendent. So it still includes the city of Wilmington, but the 3 counties of Delaware, which are Newcastle, Canton, Sussex, are all together in one district now. So um, the work that we have done and continue to do is changing in some ways. When I talked with you last, I was serving as the executive director of the Methodist Action Program.
That's right.
Um, and the Methodist Action Program is committed to uh, social justice advocacy, teaching about the social principles of the United Methodist Church, teaching that to local churches and individuals, and opening that up to include people outside of the United Methodist Church, our partners, nonprofit organizations, um, churches of other denominations, and people who have no faith at all but who love justice. And so we've invited everyone in to work on the things that affect us all. I'm no longer serving as the executive director of the Methodist Action Program. We just hired a new executive director. Her name is Donna Hitchner. She started on the 1st of September. I'm still on the board of the Methodist Action Program, though, and I still work very closely with Sister Donna Hitchner and the other members of the board and churches throughout our district and annual conference. We're set up to work for justice in a similar way as the General Board of Church and Society. The General Board of Church and Society is the social justice leading agency for the whole denomination, and we're trying to model that for our annual conference, and we're trying to live into that. And so the advocacy piece, the education piece, and the organizing piece. So those are the 3 things that we're trying to build around. One of the key things that we are engaging in is ministry with those who are formerly incarcerated and their families. So just recently, we have been approached by the new executive director of what's called the Wilmington Hope Commission. Um, and one of their works is to deal with reentry situations and help folks to re-enter into society and become productive citizens after having been incarcerated. And so helping them to get their paperwork together, their documents together, expungements from their records in certain cases, opportunities to get educated and trained so that they can have jobs and careers, and also talking with their families about ways that they can come together and help them. Now, what we want to do as the church is to come alongside and say, all right, now that you've got an organization that's helping you to put your life back together and put you in a good place with jobs and careers and family, the church wants to come alongside and be helpful in those ways, but also to offer you a spiritual family, a spiritual home, to be part of one of our churches and one of our church communities. And so we as Christians believe that uh, becoming whole, becoming fully human means to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. And so we're making that connection there. Some of the other things we're working on in social justice ministry is we're partnering with uh, environmental groups so that we can promote environmental justice as well. That is important. I'm sure everyone has seen the scientist report saying that we have way too many species dying out. We've got a global warming that is indeed affected by human activity, by our use of fossil fuels, and other things that we do to hurt our air or water or soil. And we have to make very radical changes in the way that we live and the way that we consume so that we can care for God's creation. So those are some of the things that we're working on. I'll pause for a minute. Maybe you might have some questions about some of the things I've already said, and we'll continue.
Yeah, thank you very much for that lengthy brief you've just given us. One of the one philosopher of the 20th century that I find most profound, especially when we speak of Christian hope and justice, is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Though we are two generations apart, this past year with the pandemic has actually taught me about the significance of the gospel and justice, in general. I have lived in the United States for nearly probably 19 years since I fled the civil upheaval in Liberia, and I have read many of Dr. King's books over the years, and have always aspired to be a champion of justice, a Christian justice in particular. This pandemic, Reverend Archie, has brought me in full circle in understanding some of the many challenges that Dr. King and those great freedom riders, those who fought for justice and equality, and that campaign, the civil rights marches throughout the length and breadth of this country, that we can even be sitting here today to be having this conversation about justice, about the role of the church, about issues with incarcerated people. You touched on the environmental piece. We should be great stewards of the earth. What do you say to people listening to you today, especially folks within the church community, who sometimes see environmentalism and environmental advocacy as something that is somehow contrary to our teachings? When we actually should be stewards of the earth, we should be protectors of the earth, making sure that God's creation is not only sustained, but is protected in a way that is going to leave an environment that is free with fresh air, an environment that is accessible for the generations to come.
Well, I thank you for asking about that. Certainly, Dr. Martin Luther King is a drum major for justice. And one of the things that King talked about in his, I believe it was 1967 address, he talked about the three evils of society. He talked about militarism. He talked about poverty. He talked about consumerism. And one of the things about consumerism, as it relates to the environment, is there are plenty of things that we have identified as ways to be better stewards of our environment. One of the challenges in implementing them is we've got huge corporations that control legislation. They control decisions made around oil consumption. They control things around transportation issues. They control things around environmental issues. How much pollution is legally acceptable by corporations that produce goods and produce waste as a result. So we have to challenge ourselves to think about things in terms of our future, not just our children or grandchildren's future, but even our own immediate future, because the earth is the only home that we have. Spiritually, we know that you go back to Genesis, and God created the first human beings and called them to care for creation and to keep things in good order. In that sense, humans are called to be stewards of all of what we see before us and to exploit the resources of the earth and to exploit the plants and animals on the earth as if they're just there for our exploitation and not as if we are part of a connected whole is a gross misunderstanding of what God has called us to be as good stewards over creation. And we must understand that we are interconnected. Dr. King talked about interconnectedness as far as people of different races and ethnic groups and societies and cultures and countries. But we are interconnected with nature. We cannot believe that somehow we can continue to pollute water, air, make it harder to produce, harder and harder to produce crops that we need for food, and somehow we're going to remain unaffected. Now, if you think about the global warming situation, if the sea levels continue to rise and the air continues to warm, we've already seen in this past season alone where more hurricanes and more
Right.
natural, what we will call natural disasters are going to increase, and they're going to be more intense as a result of warmer air. I don't know enough about the science to be able to get deeply into that, but you listen to our scientists, our climatologists, our those who understand this, and they're telling us that we're headed for serious disasters, and some of these disasters are going to cause wars because they're going to create billions and trillions of dollars in damages across the world. And it's going to create more refugees. It's going to create more food insecurity. It's going to cause people to be more violent as they try to take others' resources because they don't have resources of their own. So we're going to have chaos across the world. So everything is interrelated. You cannot separate anything out and say, well, let's just talk about the environment here. You can't talk about global warming. You can't talk about environmental justice without that being leading us to talk about economic justice or justice for the poor. You think about some of the poorest nations in the world, especially those coastal nations, they are going to be the ones that suffer the most. And the irony is they're the ones who are probably producing the least amount of harm to the environment just because of the way their societies are set up. They're not, in many cases, very developed countries. It's the developed countries that are producing most of this problems in the world, the Chinas, the United States of America, the Western European countries.
That's quite correct. And that let me come to the question that has to do with some of the challenges that pastors during this pandemic have encountered. Frontline workers, as we've listened to the news, we've read the papers, is something that is taking place all over the entire country. I'm talking about the U.S., and not only the U.S., but also other parts of the world. Frontline workers are being challenged mentally in terms of this particular pandemic. What is it like in the, let me say, the Delaware district now, because you are Delaware district superintendent now with the realignment that is taking place, is happening all around the Northern jurisdiction. a northeastern jurisdiction within the United Methodist Church. We have the same here, where Western PA is collaborating realignment with Susquehanna and, of course, West Virginia.
Yeah.
The status of pastors in your district with this pandemic, what has it been like? What are some of the challenges? And in terms of the folks who are engaged in the day-to-day activities of soul renewal, soul searching, giving some sense of hope to the community in the midst of this lockdown we've experienced. And we still have a long way to go in terms of just some of the misinformation that is taking place. And what is it like in Delaware? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. Great. It's a mixed bag. One of the positives, I guess you could say, is many people have really expanded their technical capacity as churches out of necessity, because they have had to figure out a way through Zoom and Facebook Live and so many other ways to be able to continue to carry on worship for those who are unwilling or unable to come out based on their fears of catching COVID. And so many churches who had no online capacities, no broadcast of ministries before, have suddenly become churches that do have them, from small churches to great churches. And they've figured out how to, pastors have become sound engineers and lighting technicians, and they've figured this stuff out so that they can reach the people. And so it's forced technological advancement on many of our churches. So that's been a good thing. It's been reported in general of the churches in this district that finances have remained relatively steady. One of my fears early on was that once this pandemic came, that many of these churches who are used to in-person attendance and people bringing their tithes and their offerings to put in the basket during the worship service, that churches were going to really struggle having, less people in attendance and in-person attendance and more people online. But most of them have remained relatively steady. A few have actually done better in their offerings as people continue to be good stewards and sow into the ministries of the church. And we've reached people that in many cases we weren't going to be able to reach, folks who would never come and be a part of an in-person attendance, but now they can be a part of an online church activity, whether it be Bible study or worship service or church meetings. And so folks have become very adept and flexible for the most part. Now, for some of our churches, of course, they've struggled because many of their workers have been people who've worked on the front lines. They worked in restaurants and they worked in capacities where they would have to interact with the public, theaters, different places. And so they've lost jobs, or these kinds of organizations have downsized, and folks have lost hours if they have not outright lost their jobs. And so it's been a strain on individuals. But I've seen churches step up to the plate and be helpful to these people. I've seen food ministries expand, and I've seen churches that were not working together before all of a sudden figure out ways to be in partnership and cooperation with each other and with the community. And that's continuing to grow. That's even as we speak, folks are making more and more plans about how to connect with people, particularly the poor and the downtrodden and those who have suffered. So a lot of good things have happened. A few churches have really suffered. But again, this is the minority of churches because their culture was very much into the in-person attendance, and that has waned. And some churches, even though they're meeting back again, they've struggled to get the same numbers that they've had before. So it's a mixed bag.
Talk to us a little bit about what justice and equity are central to the United Methodist Church social principles. And I'm certainly sure within the Eastern PA Conference of the United Methodist Church, what is diversity like in your area in terms of those pastoral leaders, those within laity, those common people who are involved in the activities of the church? Would you care to comment a little about that?
Sure. Now, let me make sure I understand your question. You're asking about the diversity of leadership within the church and also areas where we're helping people to grow in the areas of justice.
That's correct. Diversity and inclusion within the social principles, which encourages all races within that context coming together. What is your leadership like within the now Delaware district
Yes.
of the United Methodist Church in the whole Wilmington and Sussex County area?
Yes. Well, I think that from our bishops on down, our Bishop Peggy Johnson, who just retired recently, and now we've got Bishop Latrell Miller Easterling, who has taken over as the Episcopal leader of the Peninsula Delaware Conference, as well as continuing to lead the Baltimore Washington Conference. Our bishops on down have been careful about trying to make sure that we have good representation amongst racial ethnic groups in leadership in the conference. Our cabinets have been diverse as far as racially diverse, as far as gender diversity in leadership in our not only our cabinet, but key leaders in our conference who lead committees like finance committee and evangelism committees and board of trustees. And so we've been very intentional about the diversity there. We've also tried to live into as much as we can the diversity in pastoral appointments, appointing racial ethnic minority clergy to particularly larger membership white congregations. Again, where appropriate, where these pastors display these gifts and graces to lead these congregations. That's been a part of our conversation. So, because we want to have a truly itinerant clergy system. So it shouldn't be a system where, churches that have mostly Black culture or Hispanic culture only receive Black pastors or Hispanic pastors, and white churches with white pastors. We've been intentional about trying to help the diversity in leadership. Now, as far as lay leadership, we're the same. It's really notable that many of our key lay leaders across the conference, both in the local churches and district and conference lay leaders, are women for the most part. And so we see that happening as well. Also appointing women to larger membership congregations as lead pastors. That's something that we're growing in our diversity in that way as well. We still have a long way to go. There's still inequities. If you look at the numbers, being male, being white still is a privilege, and we still see those privileges, and so there's not complete equity, but that's something that's a work in progress always as we continue to examine who's in leadership. And diversity is a good thing, of course, because that's a strength. And you see our society, and in particular Delaware and the Eastern Shore of Maryland, continues to get more and more diverse as folks from other areas are moving into these areas. Newcastle County, Delaware in particular, is a place that continues to grow. It's one of the most growth heavy areas of our nation. It started above the canal, northern part of Newcastle County, which it would include Wilmington, Newark, other areas, but it has grown to the southern part of Newcastle County too, to include towns like Middletown, to Odessa, and Townsend. So you see tremendous growth in these areas, and the people who are coming in are diverse. They're coming in from various racial ethnic groups, coming in from various cultural groups, from other states, from New England, from the northeastern states, mid-Atlantic states, and all around. And so with that, they bring diversity with them. They bring diverse experiences with them, diverse cultures. We haven't always kept up with in joining them into our ministries, but they're joining our churches and they're making a difference. And we're putting them in leadership positions, and they're bringing new experiences and skills to bear on our ministries. Those are good things.
Well, those of you who just joined us, let me welcome you to the program Talk with the Pastor. It's a production of the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network, and we're transmitting today to you from Weston, Pennsylvania, both Weston, PA, and of course, Wilmington, Delaware, on the eastern shore of the United States. Our global audience joining us, we want to welcome you to the broadcast as well. Our special guest happens to be the district superintendent of the Delaware district. Initially, I indicated was Wilmington, but it's all incorporated now with a realignment. Joseph Archie happens to be the district superintendent of the Delaware district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of United Methodist Church. We're discussing a wide range of issues of justice, issues relative to spirituality, the essence of the church, the United Methodist Church in particular, the role it has played over the years, and the role it will continue to play into the future. I will come to the question that has to do with the next general conference. And I know that's the question most pastors are receiving now, and maybe for the next couple of months. What is happening to September? What are we going to do? And I've always said, let us continue to pray, because I'm not sure whether this pandemic is going to end. If we had any plan for the pandemic, maybe as church planners, maybe we will have, if we knew that the pandemic was going to come, we would have done it 5 years ago. We would have planned 5 years ago what we were going to do. But like you explained, and as you enumerated, people have gone on to do ministries in surprising and quite divine ways that is just unimaginable. And we thank God that in the midst of all that we are enduring, God to stay on the throne, as God to stay sovereign. Within your Delaware district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church, what is the conversation like around September 2022? You are the district superintendent, and a follow-up to that would be, as we have this conversation, I know you have a considerable lot to do as district superintendent. Now you have a heavy load. How is it with your soul, brother?
Oh, thank you. Well, let me answer that part first. It is well with my soul. I have good colleagues and good cooperation with my administrative assistants and other elders in the district, and lay committees, and we work well together. So what would seem like an onerous task and a heavy burden to be a district superintendent with 140 some churches in the district and across the whole state, albeit a small state, it would seem to be something that's overwhelming, but it hasn't been, because I have so many good people that I work alongside and with, and in cooperation with the cabinet, the other district superintendents, and Bishop Easterling, who has taken over as our new Episcopal leader. And so it's a team effort. And I try to stay connected. I'm with a covenant discipleship group with 7 of us, 2 clergy and 5 lay persons. We get together every Monday night and we hold one another accountable um, and encourage one another to live out the spiritual disciplines, disciplines of justice and devotion and worship and compassion. And we are very much in covenant. We have been in that group since January. And so in that way, and I continue to preach, probably on average about once or twice a month. And in addition to the other things I do, so that I can remain, so I don't get too rusty in my preaching skills and ability. And so I try to stay there, and I try to accept every invitation I can as possible, given my schedule, so that I can preach and teach and be in fellowship with the people, whether it be sometimes online or in person preaching. So it's well with my soul. I thank God for my family, my daughter, my wife, my parents, my sister and brother-in-law, my inner circle, which everyone undergirds each other with prayer and keeps each of us going. So it's well with my soul. Thank you for that. But back to the conversation about what's going to happen, when we finally can get to a general conference, if we can get to a general conference.
That's right. That's
Uh,
what we gave.
that's right. Most of our leaders, bishops and general church agents and district superintendents, all of us, I guess we would be um, we we have to say that we really don't know yet. We're hoping that we're going to be able to have a general conference. It's important, given the what many are calling irreconcilable differences and understandings on human sexuality, and not just that, but biblical interpretation in general has gotten us to a place where we have decided, through the protocol, reconciliation, and grace, through separation, that we probably are hurting the witness of Jesus Christ by continually infighting on some of these issues, and that we would be better off if we have a split as a denomination. If it hadn't been for COVID, we probably would have been already split. We would have had a general conference. We would have had one in 2020. We would have gone ahead, and we would have been living into being at least two separate denominations, and probably some other smaller ones that would come out of it as well. Getting to a general conference, I think it might be, this is me speaking, probably still a bit unlikely, just because of the logistics of trying to coordinate across several continents. We've got churches in the Philippines, we've got churches in Africa, we've got churches in Eurasia, and we've got churches here in the United States of America, and different time zones, different capacities and opportunities to have connection through online capabilities. Factor into that all of the other political dynamics of people trying to get together and gather in certain places, even if we weren't going to have one big gathering in one city. Even if we tried to do it in a different way, it's going to be a monster trying to make all of that happen. In normal times, it has often been difficult for people, particularly in Africa, to get visas sometimes so that they could go to a place like Minneapolis, which is where we're set up to meet if it happens. Now, imagine how much harder that is given COVID-19, this global pandemic that we're dealing with. So the best minds have said we don't know yet, and I'm sure there are folks who are working on getting us to that point, but there are so many factors that on the surface you might not think would be a big deal, but they really are. And to have a completely fair general conference, we want to make sure that all voices are heard, and that all persons who are delegates have equal opportunity to vote. And so I don't know. I think most folks would tell you, if they're honest, they really don't know at this point if we're going to be able to pull this off.
That's right. And just before we wrap up, let me ask the question I've been wanting to ask. Joe Archie, coming to ministry, the call, the genuine desire and the commitment to be in service, selfless service to not only to the Wilmington area, now the Delaware District Superintendent, but to peoples of the world, those fellowships that you have, those international engagements as a connectional church. I'm certainly sure there are collaborative arms all over the world, not only in Africa, but Asia and other parts, Eurasia. Talk to us a little bit. What gravitated Brother Archie to ministry? How did this call come about to be in service? Maybe could have been a business executive or could have worked on Wall Street, but left all of those behind and decided to be in service to the folks, to people who just ordinary people, rich and poor, people who going through difficult times, those who have their day caught up with them, for them, and you have to be the one in that compassionate role, giving a helping hand, but also most cases we are always receiving, because as we give, as we educate, as we counsel, we are also in return receiving. Talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about the call.
Well, thank you. Great. I'm glad to talk about that. I was a college student at the University of Delaware, and I was all set to become an officer, second lieutenant in the Army, in the U.S. Army. That was my goal. I was there at school on an ROTC is Reserve Officer Training Corps, by the way. So it's a program in the colleges that trains you to become an officer in the armed services. And I was there on an Army scholarship, and I was totally committed and heading in that direction. I had no plans or thoughts about being a pastor or minister in any way. I grew up in a Christian church and believed in God, but wasn't particularly religious. But during my college years, I grew more and more religious as I had a serious hunger for wanting to know answers about the big things in life. Why are we here? What happens to us when we die? I wanted a meta narrative. I didn't want to just, go through the motions of life. And so you mentioned Dr. King earlier. I was always reading his work, Strength to Love. Obviously, King was a Baptist minister, a Christian minister. Had heroes like Thurgood Marshall, who became Supreme Court Justice, people who fought for justice. I think when I realized that the church was about justice, which I was interested in, and reading scriptures like Micah, who, the prophet Micah, who tells us, what does the Lord require of us but to do justice, to love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And Amos tells us, that justice should roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. When I really made that connection in my mind that justice was tied up in who God is, I think I started seeing myself as being called by God to be a minister to the people. And at first I thought about chaplaincy, but then the Lord made it clear to me I wasn't called to be a chaplain. So I left the Army, ROTC. I left that path, worked in the business world for a few years, never was quite comfortable there because I did not see myself in that capacity. It wasn't fulfilling for me. Nothing wrong with being a business executive, but that wasn't for me.
And there's always a saying, when God calls, no matter how you go dodging, yes, eventually
God catches up with you. Yes. And that's exactly what happened. And when I was 28 years old, I put myself fully into the process of being trained to become a minister in the United Methodist Church, and I got appointed. I was a lay pastor, had no licensing school. I had not been ordained yet, but I started at a church on the west side of Wilmington, small congregation, and I immediately felt like this is what God is calling me to do. So I left the business world, went to seminary that same summer, and a world was just opened up for me, and it felt just like, okay, this is what God wants me to do. I have no idea what this path is going to mean for me, but I've given myself over totally to God and said, Lord, here I am. Use me for your glory. Here I am, Lord. Not perfect, flawed, ignorant, misunderstanding a lot of things, but I'm willing to put myself at your service, to serve you and your kingdom and your people. And so I still look back even now and say, how in the world did I end up here? But I started out teaching Bible study on Wednesday nights at my home church. My pastor at the time was a seminarian and not always available during the week. I said, let me teach the Bible study on Wednesday night. And then a new pastor came, and I was still teaching the Bible study. And he encouraged me to be a worship leader on Sunday morning every once in a while. And then it grew from there. After a while, I became the worship leader every Sunday. And then, when the pastor was away, somebody said, well, who's going to preach? And somebody said, Joe's going to preach. And I said, wait a minute, I don't preach. I just teach Bible study. And then I got in the pulpit and started preaching. And people said, yeah, we think you're called to this. And so I had the affirmation of my home church and my community. And then, as much as, I pushed back a little bit, like, wait a minute, I don't know if I really want to get full-fledged into this. I had that support from the people, and that was confirmation that, yes, this is what God is calling me to do. And so, after pastoring 6-7 churches in 2016, the bishop asked me to serve as the district superintendent. And I'm still growing, still learning, don't have it all together, not perfect by any means, growing in the grace and knowledge of Christ, going on to perfection by the grace of God. And I hope and pray that the work that I do has been helpful to people in pointing toward Jesus and being compassionate, helping people to understand justice in particular as part of God's plan for how we should live out this kingdom on earth as in heaven.
Well, let me say a big thank you. I want to thank you, District Archie, for giving us this opportunity to be in conversation with us. It is our hope and prayer that we will find another time to request an engagement with you, but it has been a great experience listening to you, the experience that you bring to the ministry and the things that you are involved with within the Delaware district now Delaware district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of United Methodist Church. I want to use this opportunity to say congratulations for the new portfolio. And I'm hoping that soon, in the not too distant future, whenever I'm visiting in Wilmington, Wilmington is my second home. So,
Man, we welcome you back whenever you're here in town. Let me know. We'll get together.
That's right. And let's get a closing statement from you, sir.
Well, if I could say, let me encourage the people. People need encouragement always. Know that God is for us and not against us. That, yes, there will be trials and tribulations and perils and distresses. There will be hardships, but God is for us, and we can be strengthened and we can have joy in our spirit, even when the world around us might seem to be falling apart. Let me encourage you, everybody who's listening, to take the spotlight off of yourself. One of the best ways to be joyful is to get engaged in helping someone that Jesus might affectionately call the least of these, the poor, the downtrodden, the left behind, the left out, the disenfranchised, those who don't know Jesus to the pardoning of their sins. Be an evangelist in all that you do. Share the goodness of God. You don't have to know the Bible from Genesis to Revelation to be able to share that God is good and that God is working in your life and how God has changed you and is continuing to change you so that you might be more like his son, Jesus Christ. And do think about justice truly as a key part of what God's plan is for God's world. And so stand up for what is right and just. Be courageous, even if it might cost you something, some friends, some position. That way, one day, when we face the judgment, when the Lord asks us if we have been faithful, we will be able to say, yes, Lord, I have been faithful to the best of my abilities, and as your spirit has led me to stand up for what is right and just, to promote Jesus and the will of you, the Father, and not my own will. And so that's what I'll leave you with. And I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Zeze, for your continuing commitment to making sure that people around the world hear the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ and connect with each other for this transformation of the world.
Thank you very much. And on that note, from District Joseph Archie, we want to wrap up this edition of the program.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to move the hand to light, the greatest gift we can go on.
Let me thank you so much, Joseph Archie, the District Superintendent of the Delaware District of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church, appearing here on our show today as special guest. We want to thank District Archie for the considerable level of engagement with us today, and we're looking forward to another interesting edition, another time that we're going to be engaging with the district superintendent of the Delaware district of the Peninsula Delaware Conference of the United Methodist Church. That's in the northeastern jurisdiction, eastern Pennsylvania, all the way there in Wilmington, Delaware, speaking to us today. On the program, talk with the pastor. This program is designed for you, with you in mind. We come here each week bringing you programs of information, entertainment, as well as education on the radio service of the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network. Let's hope it's been great being with you here today, talking about the Delaware State, the Eastern PA Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. The Peninsula Delaware Conference is called, of the United Methodist Church. And as a consequence of the realignment now, is collaborating with the Washington Baltimore Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Don't worry, soon make a change. God's great big family, and the truth, love is up the way.
Oh, what a wonderful tune that is going to take us on tonight on the show, Talk with the Pastor. We Are the World, taking us all the way back to 1983, and reflection, great memories of the past, and the essence of justice, the role and the pathway that we are involved with in making the world what it ought to be. And we were talking to a man of justice, and a man who got a call. And now he's doing all he can to cater to the needs and aspirations of the incarcerated in Delaware State. It's been great being with you here. My name is Reverend Dr. Zay Zapata. Thank you so much for listening to the show today. And God willing, we're going to be back again with another interesting and fascinating edition of the program. Talk with a pastor. I will bring you a wide range of issues. We talk about issues that tend to shape the destiny of our one world. We bring you academics, pastoral leaders, ordinary folks within the community, people who are contributing to the development and well-being of society. And I want to thank you so much for listening today. We'll see you next time. Until then, we are the world.
It's too long when we go back to see what. What? Cinnamon gum. And I will be